Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the July 15th, 2008 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. May we have the roll call, please?
Agency members: Raymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the July 15, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, July 10, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. The next item?
Next item is approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
I'll abstain from the minutes.
Are there any corrections or modifications to the minutes? If not, and noting an abstention from Mr. Quintero, the minutes will be approved as submitted. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
I have a card from Mr. Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano, members of the Redevelopment Agency and city staff. A few years ago, when we had a debate on the Americana, debate that the losing end lost by about 500 votes, there were many concerned issues. Some of the issues were traffic, and it looks like those traffic issues perhaps will not come to fruition as we were concerned about. But we're also concerned about the finances, and I was one of those who came forward to discuss the issues that I felt at the time were not being considered. During the calculation of the benefits that would come out of this development, meaning the additional property tax increment and the sales tax increment, there was no allowances made with regard to the principal and interest that the city of Glendale would be paying. I think it's a bond of $48 million. And it was always my thought that what if we were to account for the principal and interest as part of the overall process of netting out what comes out of the Americana. I figured that by the time 3 months go out, we should have sufficient reports having to do with the sales tax reports and sufficient information with regard to the property that has been sold to get an assessment as to how it is that this particular investment is doing for the city of Glendale. You know, we go through the process of proposing all types of assistance to various different development projects through this agency, and the outcomes and the performance of those generally we don't get to see, not on a regular basis. And I think that the public ought to know this was a major issue for the residents of Glendale. It was a significant investment of $77 million at historical cost in many of the properties. So that if we were to really had looked at those properties valued at the latest of market or the highest of market or cost, I think it would have given us a significant different picture as to the actual return. Back then, 4 years ago, I calculated a loss. And actually calculated down to the number of cars, and it was like 35 cents loss per automobile. But now we have an additional source of revenue, as Mr. Yusefian pointed out earlier a few weeks ago, that they're now charging for parking. So that may be an additional revenue to the city, and that was not basically taken into the picture. The cost of the condominiums obviously are much higher now than they were when it was proposed. So it is very likely that this thing is actually turning out to be a win for the city overall, and that my calculations back 4 years ago may be incorrect. But I don't know. And I think that this agency owes the public, a periodic report on the performance on that investment. Obviously, now I know that the property tax increment basically helps out other projects. And we know that the sales tax increment basically goes all into salaries. So at the end of the day, I don't know where the residents of Glendale really benefit from this thing other than having a nice shopping area to go to. But as far as, netting out of some additional tangible benefits, I don't know where they are. But I do have this inkling, this thought that perhaps we may not be actually netting out positively out of this particular project. And it would be nice for the city to actually recommend that a periodic report be done to see if this particular project is giving us the projected income that we expected. And I would love to see the actual cost that the city of Glendale and that the agency is paying on the interest on those bonds that were issued for $48 million. Thank you.
Mr. Starbird, that's the last card I have for oral communications. Is such a periodic analysis performed on the project as a whole?
You say, is it as a matter of course? Not generally. That's not to say that it couldn't be.
Okay, is that something that comes to us when we look at our budget, when we look at any particular...
Well, the items mentioned by Mr. Milano, I think, are a rather unsophisticated aspect of a project like this, just the direct economic return. That you do get in terms of the sales tax projections, the property tax projections. I think the more sophisticated way of looking at a project of this nature is what is the broader direct and indirect spin-off in a community like Glendale? To what extent does it affect the visibility and as a result possibly other businesses, property owners being interested in your downtown area, in addition to the direct economic spin-off produced by the project itself? As I noted on several occasions throughout the discussion of the Americana, this project of this nature isn't undertaken for direct economic return. It isn't just the sales tax revenues produced or the property tax revenues produced. Indeed, if that was the intent, just to get interest on your money, you could probably invest it in a number of different ways. This is about the vitality of a downtown in a community that frankly needed some lift, and that has to do more with the indirect benefits derived from its impact in the downtown area than from the direct economic benefits. And how you begin to measure those at this short date, I'm not sure, but over time, I think you can begin to measure those in terms of the continued activity and development in the downtown area.
I'll get to Mr. Yusefian in a moment. As the project matures and begins to fill out, both in terms of the retail and the apartments and condominiums, I think it might be a good idea to measure as much of the impact as we can. Some of those items that you discussed, I think we'd have a tough time measuring the image. How do you measure the increase of the image of Glendale or the panache of downtown? But certain items certainly are measurable, the economics.
On that note, and again, very difficult to measure, but the number of developments that have come before you since the Americana began construction and have noted that in their siting decisions and development decisions, the Americana was part of that decision-making. I think of the triangle development, the apartment units. One of the first things the owner-developer of that very large REIT mentioned was the Americana, the success of the Americana, and their interest in siting a project in Glendale. Now, how do you measure that? I'm not too sure. That's rather intrinsic, but I think it's a value nonetheless.
I mean, I hate to fight this battle all over again. Once, I mean, we're operating, we're up and running, but I think it would be a good way to give us a summary, perhaps, of the direct and indirect, at least the measurable benefits that the city has, as well as maybe in a footnote some of the anecdotal evidence of other projects coming to town based on the Americana. Mr. Youssef.
Mr. Chair, I guess maybe Mr. Starbird may have forgotten to mention, I think Ms. Van Buyden can mention, because she was involved in writing the DDA. If I'm not mistaken, in the DDA we have an audit that we check with Caruso affiliates, because the way we get our return, our profit sharing, is they have to show us how much money they have made, whether they made it 11 or 9%, and then anything over that. So the only way we know whether or not he has gotten a return on his money is that we need to do an audit. Am I correct? So in the DA or DDA, what was the time period for the audit?
Not to expand this into a full discussion on
I'm getting looks from...
The answer is yes, and we can certainly provide additional information to you in a memo format or as a scheduled item.
Right. So on an annual basis, when that happens, then I guess we can get all that information.
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Draymond, then Mr. Weaver, then Mr. Quintero.
Mr. Chair, it was given to me a little while ago that the official and technical words are, we need to just stop. So,
well
I pass those on to you.
Well said. Mr. Weaver.
Very quickly, I think 3 months from opening is too quick to do any audit. 6 months or a year, then look at it. It's wrong to use the spike of May the 2nd through the mid-May to try to get anything on sales tax, et cetera.
Mr. Quintero.
When will we actually be receiving the first of the sales tax? I know that's coming fairly soon.
Most of those remittances come on a quarterly basis. So we can expect, you'll actually see maturity of some of the individual stores probably toward the end of this calendar year. By the time we get the third quarter annual, and frankly, it'll be the holiday season reports that come back, which will be January, February of '09. That's where you'll see the true implications of these shops. I mean, right now they're in a settling in stage. A number of them are new to the area. I just had a meeting with our sales tax consultant. It'll be the fourth quarter reports that we get the first part of '09 when you really begin to see how well the stores are producing.
And that won't include Calvin Klein, it won't include Tiffany's.
That's right. Some are opening later.
And others.
That's right.
And how about the county assessor's tax, or
Tax increment.
well, not the increment, but the actual, the decision,
The assessments?
property assessments, yeah.
Well,
when are we gonna-
that will have more quickly. That will probably have in the numbers that come out this year, because they will have had to have arrived at some assessment, although it may come later, that was constructed by June 1. Whether it gets fully assessed in time for us to see it in our first assessments in December probably remains to be seen. But once again, probably after the first of the year before you see all of that being shaken out. The interior improvements by the various tenants and all those things weren't completed, so who knows how long it takes the assessor to bring those up to speed, but it'll probably be '09.
I know they're very active. Every time I run into one of the deputy,
Oh, yeah.
he spends a lot of time here in Glendale.
The sharp pencil.
County needs money too.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other, response to that, we're going to move on to the next item.
On the business agenda at 6A is a public hearing regarding Director of Development Services regarding the proposed 11-story, 172-room Hyatt Place Hotel to be located at 225 West Wilson Avenue. At 6A1 is a motion provisionally approving Stage 1 design review subject to the resolution of the floor area ratio, FAR, and recommendations and comments from the city's principal urban designer and the agency.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing now and then go to Mr. Tatavosian.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to go to Mr. Alan Castillo to present the report on the project.
Good afternoon, Agency Chair Najarian and members of the agency. I'm Alan Castillo and I'm with the Redevelopment Agency. On January 10th of this year, the agency and Comar entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement for the development of 225 West Wilson Avenue. During this time, the developer and the agency have been working on site design and been discussing the business terms of the project. The agency recently approved a 90-day extension to the exclusive negotiating agreement, at which time staff will update the agency on business terms of the project. The Hyatt Place Glendale project is located within the Central Glendale project area in the Orange Central district of the Downtown Specific Plan at 225 West Wilson. The 18,726 square feet site is located on the northeast corner of Central and Wilson Avenues. The project site is owned by the agency and is currently used as parking space with 59 parking spaces. The developer, Comar Investments, is proposing to develop an 11-story, 172-room hotel to be called Hyatt Place. The hotel will include an independently operated restaurant as well as in-house amenities such as meeting areas, garden decks, fitness center with pool, housekeeping, and laundry facilities. Parking for the hotel will be provided via 4 levels of subterranean parking garage with approximately 232 parking spaces versus the 231 that was stated in the report. Staff is recommending approval of Stage 1 design review subject to the city's principal urban designer's comments. Vache Hanazian, manager of Comar Investments, is here to give a brief introduction of their company and the project. Aram Alajajian and Sako Marcosi from Alajajian Marcosi Architects will provide any answers with regards to the design of the architect or the project.
Good afternoon. I'm Vache Hanazian with Comar Investments. And today we're here to attain our Stage 1 approvals for the Hyatt Place, and we're excited that this day is finally here. And we have created a beautiful hotel for the city of Glendale. And today we have our team, Aram and Sako, and we also have Chris Dobbins with Hyatt Place here. And we have our full staff for any questions or that we can answer for the agency. So on that, I'll introduce Aram. I'll draw you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the agency. I'm Aram Alajajian, 320 West Arden, City of Glendale. I'm the project architect for the proposed project. I want to make a brief presentation and just walk you through the project, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. And I'll stop whenever that famous word will come up. Stop, I'll stop. Let me start by putting those boards.
That's why it's a magic word.
Most of those.
Yeah, it's on. Is the light on? It's on.
No, it's on. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Now, most of those drawings are already in your illustration package that you have received. First illustration board, we have the perspective of the hotel on the top that looks from the corner of Central and Wilson Avenue, and a site plan. We have Central Avenue, north-south, shown at this direction here, Wilson Avenue, and we have it's bounded by the alley. This is a public alley where where we're going to take an hour access into the project. And looking at the first floor plan, as staff report has mentioned, we have 4 levels of subterranean parking, but the drop-off will happen at the Wilson and alley corner, where we have a one-way driveway coming in of 18 feet wide, and a row of parking, for stocking for the valet. And we have 2 guest or registration parkings also located in front of the building. So first floor, mainly at the street level, will accommodate the hotel lobby. We have a breakfast area, which is served within the hotel rate. We have a registration desk. We have offices for the hotel, which would be situated at the far corner here. And we have a kitchen area, which would be serving the breakfast for the hotel. We also have at the corner, we have a 2,000 square feet restaurant area, would be operated separately from the hotel. Now, after the drop-off, the car will move in north to the Central Avenue, and we have a 2-way driveway which takes you down to the lower level parking. It is also, we have an access coming out of the parking which would be used by the valet only, coming through the alley and bringing the car over the entrance area. And the center of the project, we have a grand stair which will tie in first and second floors together. We have 5 banks of elevator. 2 of the elevators will mainly work from ground up to the first level. This will bring the public and a guest from the garage structure all the way to the street level. And there's a little lobby which separates the hotel use from the restaurant or public uses. And then the hotel itself has 3 banks of elevators which will be used all the 11 levels of the hotel. Now, the second floor, we have amenities that basically in use with the hotel conjunction. We have meeting rooms situated on the left wing, and then we have an exercise room with a swimming pool overhanging the driveway area, and we have the laundry and some service accommodations on the back. We have a garden deck that will, meeting rooms will open up into it from the left and right, public restroom facilities, and additional like conference room, meeting room for the hotel. Typical floors of the hotel. Above the third floor, we have typical levels of the hotel. At the third level, we have rooms looking south, and majority of rooms will be looking south. We have variety of rooms that already confirmed by Hyatt architects also, the mix of the rooms. We have double queens and kings, and we have single rooms here. We have disabled accessible rooms located on each floor, and 2 of them available per each floor. As we go up to 5th and 8th floors, and above that 10th and 11th floor, building massing will start reducing down. And as you would see on the renderings following this, it gradually will step up to the lower massing. So the building elevations, it will step up with the lower massing towards the roof element. We suggested to use quality materials here at the project. We have glass on the curtain wall, and some of the areas, majority is used up is the metal panel. We have stone cladding over the base of the building, which sort of flows around the base of the building, and in some areas it will go in a vertical sense of it. The decks would be landscaped. Also the terrace, which will be used for the restaurant, will have a potted plants and the landscaping at the corner of Wilson and Central Avenue. Now, going back to the traffic circulation, this would be the first level of the parking, where a 20-foot driveway will come down, and we'll have a parking throughout this area, and it will rotate down from each side down to the lower levels, and this is 3rd and 4th floor parking. Actually, 1st and 2nd level will house the 59 parking spaces that is going to be replaced, city parking spaces that are there right now, and also some public parking that would be serving the restaurant or independent tenant. The rest of the 3rd and 4th floors will accommodate all the valet parking, and a hotel will be operated by valet parking only. We have 231 parking spaces in total, so which meets the basic standards, with the replaced parking and also parking for the restaurant. Now, to show you how the massing of the building looks, that will be my last panel here. This is looking somewhat from the top. You can see how the hotel is located in relation to the streets here, and that would be the porte cochere. We have an element here that will be integrated with the entrance. That will be sort of an art piece that we have a sculptor will be working on it. We have a waterfall, a glass and a waterfall at the entry element here, where you enter through this, so the parking mostly will be screened from the pedestrian. However, the sculpture will become a part of the pedestrian access. This is my brief presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have a card from a member of the public. I will call, and then we'll go for questions from colleagues. So, Barry Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, the council, the agency. I'm Barry Allen, and I served on the Downtown Specific Plan Advisory Committee. And I want you to know that I think that this falls completely within the scope of what we had suggested and worked with staff in putting that particular plan together. I also think that Comar should be applauded based on the fact that even in today's tenuous times, they're willing to make an investment, a serious investment in Glendale. And I think that the Glendale management and the different departments that they will be working with, including the city attorney's office, the planning department, the redevelopment agency, should do whatever they can in their power to expedite the successful completion of this project. And I think that from looking at the plans, from the materials that were in the packet, I think it's going to be a delightful asset to the community. And I think that it will flow very well as we see the development of Wilson becoming a main artery in the city. And I think that this is something we should applaud, and we should definitely give the approval to design review. Thank you. I'm Barry Allen.
Thank you. I do not have any other cards except for the one submitted by Mr. Hanessian and Mr. Alajajian, and that was for questions only, correct? Okay, therefore I'm going to close the public hearing and go to my colleagues. Start on this side. Mr. Yusefian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chair, a couple of questions on the design. If you could put up the picture of the showing on the central.
Yeah.
Two concerns. Basically, the building on Wilson looks very nice. It has a very nice a facade element. The signage is, what I'm looking at is only on Wilson. Now, this building is facing two streets. One is Wilson, and the other one is another signature street in Glendale, which is Central. There is absolutely no signage on Central at all. And I don't know if there is going to be any signage on the opposite side of, not Wilson, on the north side. So if somebody's traveling southbound, would they be able to know there is a Hyatt there? So, because my thinking is people will be coming from two different directions. They're either going to get off at Colorado out of the 5 freeway, travel northbound on Central, which they can see the Hyatt emblem as they get to Wilson. But if they're getting off at 134 and moving southbound, is there signage for them to see where that is?
Yes.
Do you have that? Do you show that? Where is that signage going to be? And is there any signage on Central?
Yeah.
Come on.
Just because of the facade looking at the tall tower that's looked towards the Central Avenue is so narrow, we haven't really studied if we need any sign up here. But we had that consideration. South traveling from Central, we located the Hyatt sign right at the top here.
Okay.
So the people who are going to travel southbound, they will be able to see the Hyatt sign, similar to the other side on the top, on the parapet.
There's one issue. Currently, on that site next door, you do have a couple of buildings that are 2 or 3 stories at the most.
Correct.
At one point, when that gets developed to another 5 or 6 story or maybe higher, would that interfere with that signage? You see what I'm saying? At this point, no problem. You have a site and you could see it. But if those buildings get done, then what happens to that signage? Would you be able to see it or not?
Well, that's a good thought. We could work with the staff and see if
Don't
the
assume
signage
that
would
no
be.
people are not going to build anything. You never know.
Okay.
The second thing is that I want to discuss is, as I said, the facade on Wilson, beautiful. I have no problem with it. I have some issues with the facade on Central. The facade on Central, what is approved from the first time I saw this project, on the bottom part, if you look, it's very flat. Maybe I'm reading it that way, or you could tell me something about it. All the way on the ground floor, you see everything else has that brown, kind of establishes a base. This is a base for the building. But when it comes to Central, that element somehow misses that brown completely. Give me an explanation why. I'm not talking about the glass element. I'm talking about the build. Yes. And the second thing is there are 2 big storefronts. Are those storefronts set back? Are they flush? Because on your drawings it looks like flush.
Okay. First of all, this central element is the core of the project. we like to, and it contains that metal panel finish.
Right, I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, I understand. But this is the element that we like to bring it down. The stone element that, carries throughout the project, we like to vary them, and we continue steel on the Central Avenue here. Now, as far as the horizontal or articulation is concerned, we have the edge element, which is the stair tower that comes out, and there's a difference between 2.5 feet here from the hotel facade to the stair facade, and another 2.5 feet between the glass and the front of the building. So there's about...
So those storefronts are set back?
Yes.
2.5 feet?
Correct. If you look at the floor plans, especially the first floor plan, that shows the columns, emphasized columns that are at the corners of the building, and then it shows the glass which is moved back from that.
Yeah, but you look at the next one.
Yeah,
The next one, that one's flush.
Yes, we have a recess here, and this one is flash, but right now we're working on it. We may be able to pull it back a little bit.
So you're
to get
working
that.
on
Correct.
modifying
Yeah.
this. Those are the only two issues I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
one more thing, sir. Are you considering, what are some of the features as far as LEED is concerned on this building?
Well, we haven't started to make this as a lead project, but recently the council has taken a direction to consider, downtown projects to take a look at the LEED certifications. And we have Clint Knox from Comar Investments that past month or so, we've been very carefully examining most of the buildings. If you like to ask him questions, I think he's been working on it already. We have been considering, to gain some points. I think he has done some estimates already. We are like 19 points, and to be base certified, you need 26, so we're getting close there. We need to, it's a complicated process. If you need more details, I think Clint will answer that, but on the next phase, we will be working on it.
Okay, so you're considering it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Quintero?
Okay, well, it's an excellent design. I've come to expect that from this particular architect, so I'm not...
Thank you.
I'm not surprised, but I like it a lot. I like the way it sits on the corner. The first thing I want to say is, just so there's no misunderstanding, the parking spaces that are currently there are going to be replaced at the site. So that current parking lot will continue to exist. It's just going to be an even better deal for the public at large because it's going to be covered parking. But like I say, I'm impressed with the design. I like the restaurant on the corner. I think that's going to work really well. The public spaces are great. I think you've done a good job of sort of integrating those first two floors, so there'll be activity there, not just for the clients of the hotel, but the public at large. And then I'm, of course, happy to hear that you're working on your LEEDs program. I think that's very important, and I think that in the end it'll save you a lot of money. Now, one of the staff comments is kind of interesting, and that is as you go west on Wilson, that there does sort of have it's kind of a unmodulated windowless wall, so maybe something could be done on that east elevation to kind of dress it up a little bit. But anyway, all in all, I'm very happy with it, and I think you're going to do very well. The city will certainly benefit from the room taxes that we're going to participate in, and of course the restaurant will also provide some activities. So congratulations on this first initial design. I think you've done a great job.
Mr. Quintero, during our studies and study sessions with the staff and specifically with traffic and transportation, and you can see it on a page, I don't see a page number here, but page 4 on the report, that traffic has made a comment about the if the agency will consider the replacement parking somewhere else. Now, the way we design it, the parking is, we're replacing all these 59 parking spaces in the building. But throughout the course of this conversation we had with staff, traffic and transportation suggestions were very valid, and One being that, people don't like to park underground if it's a public parking, and they will come up to think of expense, it's going to be expensive and so forth. From Comar's behalf, I'd like to say that we're ready to work along that, on the next stage, and see if the staff or agency wants us to move different direction, we're ready to do that too.
I also saw that comment, but I don't agree with our esteemed traffic engineer. I like the idea of replacing it there on the spot. And yeah, they're right in the sense that people don't like the covered spaces often. But to me, that neighborhood is going to continue to need a public parking lot. So anyway, but I did see that comment in the staff report.
Thanks. Mr. Weaver?
Well, let me address the positives first. Everybody knows the Hyatt name. Hyatt Place is a new, I guess, generic grouping of Hyatts that is starting to be built in the country. Design is okay with me. I'm one of the ones that grew up here and always liked Spanish architecture, but it's a lost cause nowadays. We're going more modernistic. Traffic circulation's okay. I guess everything is going to exit in the alley out. So if you valet park at the hotel, they'll go around to Central, go down, and then when your car comes out, it'll come to the alley, and they'll come around, come back in again. It does what I've suggested we do on every new development in town now. Put public parking into the garages. In this case, it happens to be a replacement, and I've said it ought to be the first level or two. It's just a question of how you're going to manage that. If people want to park down there, they're going to want to be able to park themselves and not pay a valet fee to park. So I guess that's something for staff and you all to work out. The north side of the building, not now, someday in the future, there's going to be redevelopment north of the hotel, so any of the windows facing north will have a view for now, but in the future may not have the view in the lower floors, depending on what happens there. It's a nice layout. I have no objection at all to the layout, at all. However, based on what I said from day one in closed session, when this was brought, I've stated and I'll state it again. When agency or city-owned land is involved and any entity comes into the city and wishes to have an exclusive agreement, it's got to be done competitively. City-owned. It's agency. Anybody could come in, find a parking lot and say, come in and say, put it on the closed section, we want exclusive rights. That is what's happened here. Now, any number, Comar, any number of people could come in and bid on this. They could all go get a Hyatt place, hire you, you come up with the same exact design. That's very feasible. But it's my philosophy and my principles that say we did this the wrong way. How many more times is it going to be repeated? I said I like it, but I will not vote for it because I believe philosophically we did it the wrong way to get to this point. You're going to get the votes. You're going to build this, and I've said it's going to be good. Be a good fit there. We need the public parking because the Orange Street garage alone is not going to handle everything. So, and when it comes to council comments, and I'm again going to ask for staff to give a report on affordable housing, parking, senior housing, and hotel parking. I think we're over parking these, and I think we have to look nationwide. You don't need one parking space for every hotel room. That is ridiculous. Most people are flying in, whatever, they're not driving their cars in to go to a hotel, so is one the most. So I'll be asking for that report. Maybe we really have more public parking in these that are being overbuilt than we need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Quintero,
Yeah,
follow-up.
I have a comment and actually a question. The heliport, is it going to be in the center of the building, or is there going to be an overhang? Because the Embassy Suites, beautiful design, however, you've got that heliport overhanging central, I don't know how.
It's in the center, almost in the center,
Yeah.
but it's pulled towards the alley.
You won't
Show
see
you
it.
on the side.
Okay, so you won't see it then. I see it in the renderings, but,
It's pulled back. And I like that water treatment on the front, too.
Please forget that.
Forgot to add, I like that water treatment on the front. That's good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, heliport is, you see the parameters of the parapet of the building,
Yeah.
and the heliport is situated at this location.
okay, perfect, yeah, for
Right
whatever
here.
reason, the Embassy Suites
And-
hung it on center.
Right, and we will be covering the sides of it, so you won't see those sticks, supporting the heliport itself. And the cover will be a metal panel, same as the building materials, so we'll match with that.
Mr. Sarver, did you have a comment on that particular?
Well, on the heliport in particular, the architect's rendering shows it as a solid structure, but on some of these, you see the use of the, I'll call it chain link netting that extends beyond the structure. Is that also part of this helo? That's
Yeah.
part of what becomes, I think, is certainly not very aesthetically pleasing to look at. The structure looks nice in the architect's rendering, but usually extending beyond that is 3 or 4 or 5 feet of this sort of chain link net that extends out beyond that.
Correct, that's already shown here, it's this shaded area.
Okay.
That would be the netting. The 50 by 50 required area is this gray area in the center, and the rest is the netting
Okay.
that extends around it's a
And the
protective
substructure
netting.
will be entirely
Right,
screened.
this entirely would be within the parameter, including the netting.
Mr. Draymond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, Mr. Weaver reminded me about about what are view windows today and what they might or might not be in the future. I remember staying at the Bonaventure years ago when it was one of the tallest things in the downtown area, and all the fantastic views. They would ask you, do you want a mountain view or a downtown view? Now it's all downtown view. You're surrounded by taller buildings, but in any case, well, let me talk about a couple things here. One is I want to congratulate you, Mr. Elajajian. This is, as far as I'm concerned, a beautiful design. Just a beautiful design. And I'm very, very happy about that. And as one of your colleagues said earlier, that he was happy this day is finally here. Well, I'm happy this day is finally here as well. And that it's come so quickly. Or relatively quickly, I guess you'd say, in the glacial pace that this kind of stuff moves, in any case. I have a couple of questions, though. One is, now this particular, the Hyatt Place, that is, what range of rooms? I mean, we know what the number of rooms is for this project, but Hyatt Place in general. Is there anybody here that, it might not be you, Mr. Elajajian, but is there someone here who can speak for Hyatt in general?
Yes, Mr. Chris Dobbins is from Hyatt Hotels. They're here. He's here.
Perfect. Uh-oh. I was saying the city is calling me. Well, as long as they're not recalling me, I guess. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Dobbins. I'm Vice President of Development for Global Hyatt, West Coast Development. And I couldn't express our excitement anymore. We think this is going to be a project that we are going to showcase and bring people in to view and showcase the city. And to go back to earlier comments, the Americana was a reason we are here.
Right.
So,
Mr. Dobbins, before you get into a general presentation, let me draw you back to my questions so I can blow through my time and kick it over to the chair, and then I'm sure he'll want to hear that. I do too, but I just also want to get, I don't want to take up my time with the other points. Hyatt Place in general, how many rooms in general? What's the range for a Hyatt Place?
Really, typically, this brand, we're in anywhere from 120 to 200 keys. We have kind of started this brand. We have 120 of them open in North America. And they were conversions to get us to critical mass. And then now we have probably another 110 of them approved, 25 under construction. They are typically supposed to put personalized service more, so that's why they're 120 to 200 keys. This is perfect size, 172 keys.
Okay. And then, on the food chain of Hyatt hotels or the descendancy or whatever, comparing that to a Hyatt Regency,
It's a different...
room-wise,
It's
what's
a different
the range
product.
for a Hyatt Regency? What's the the spread on rooms in, say, a Hyatt Regency?
Well, the Hyatt Regencies are typically convention big box hotels. They typically are, let me see, the closest one you have is Century Plaza, Hyatt Regency Century Plaza, which is a 750-room hotel with a lot of meeting space. That's what the Regency brand is. Park Hyatts are boutique, 5-star. These are typically very boutique, and they're going to be in that 3.5-star range and plus. So that's typically where they but they have all of the signature items. We have the Hyatt Grand beds in these. Technology-wise, it's the most technological advanced guest room you're going to stay in.
Is there something between a Hyatt Regency and a Hyatt Place?
No.
Okay. And so typically, you say for a Hyatt Regency, there are about 750 rooms. Is that typical, or is there a range just like with Hyatt Place?
Well, there's a range. They, they go from anywhere. We've got 2,000 rooms in Chicago to down to 500. But those are big box hotels that are typically convention big hotels.
Okay, thank you. I think that was it on that. My last, thank you very much. I want to go back to Mr. Alajajian for a minute. And I would like to reemphasize again, because I don't think it can stand too much emphasis, what my colleague Mr. Quintero was discussing, which was the issue of the parking. So the public understands we're not losing the public parking component. We're replacing that, and I think that is terrific. I want to commend you and Comar for sticking to your story and sticking to your plan thus far through the process and delivering what you told us you would deliver. That is made it really an enjoyable process to help our downtown grow. Lastly, let me ask you this. When I was working in the hotel business, or in the restaurant business rather, I used to have to go occasionally to a table and say, so how was your steak? So you worked with our planning department through this, and you were talking about that it was a good, beneficial partnership. Let me ask you, how was your steak?
It's great.
It was good. They did all right.
They did fantastic.
Okay. Very good. Very good. With that, I just want to try to, I want to make one more comment, Mr. Chair, and I want to respond to Mr. Weaver's comment and try to just persuade him a little bit on one particular point on this, because I know he said he does like the design and the many of the concept aspects of it that he noted that were in the positive ledger. But I want to say that the issue related to how the city went about this, which was your major concern having to do with not putting it out to bid or what have you, I sort of feel like if that is an issue, that's on us, not on them. And I would just like to put that out there if that's what you meant anyway, I want to emphasize, as far as I'm concerned, even if that is the case, that's not something that Comar has done or Hyatt or you as an architect have done. That's a question for us as process. And so I can't, even if I agreed with that, I couldn't penalize you for that. So we are here with this design under this procedure, and if we do raise it and it comes up and we bring it back, that's something we'll look at for the future. But I would urge my colleagues not to make the decision based on a procedure that, if it is wrong, it's our procedure, not yours. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm done. That's it. Mr. Weaver probably has a follow-up.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver?
Yeah, you make a good point, Mr. Draymond, but how do I justify in my own mind to everybody that I have consistently voted against this from day one because of the process? I mean, the other comments I want to make, the outdoor water falling. It's a great idea. It breaks up that mass. I love if this is the interiors you're putting in this place.
Exactly.
I love the dark wood, rosewood or whatever you got in there. It's going to be a frequently visited place to stay. I think it's going to be a great addition to the city. I do think you're going to have, if we have public parking, you're going to have to put some signage out there saying public parking, because people will think it's just a hotel. You can't go in. But you understand, Mr. Draymond, wrestling with having consistently done it and then reversing myself at the last minute, is that the right way for me to go? That's what I have to deal with when we cast our vote here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to criticize you, Mr. Weaver.
I know you meant...
Just simply that I wanted the parties involved to know in this project that those comments relate to the procedure. It's nothing that you have done.
And I would hope in the future that when somebody does approach us, that this council or future councils go for competitive bidding. Probably would have been a Hyatt the same way, same architect, same everything. But, you should open it up, because we did that at the Social Security, Social Services building down here. We had 6, 7 bidders, and we ended up one that gave us, $6 million. They all didn't offer that deal. So there's always something to be gained by having competitive bidding. That's where I think we need to go in the future. Thank you.
I have a few questions. Mr. Alajajan, on the Central Avenue facade, is there going to be any ingress and egress for pedestrian, or is that going to be closed and directed to the lobby entrance?
Restaurants on the side.
From the Central Avenue?
From Central Avenue.
There's no entry to the hotel from the Central Avenue. There will be a pedestrian access throughout the sidewalk that were proposed to be widened, and there's also a corner. There's an outdoor sitting which would be accessible to the pedestrian, but there's no hotel entrance. Hotel entrance is the center of the project, which will be on the Wilson Avenue.
I was looking at your information, and the entrance, the drive to get to the lobby drop-off actually comes off the alley.
Part of it, yes.
Is there any problem with that? I mean, is that a tight turn to make, to turn, let's say you're going west on Wilson and you want to drop off or pick up, and so you'll turn into the alley and then make a left turn into the turnaround?
No problem.
In the
we have a number of sessions with traffic and transportation. In fact, we're with some suggestions, we're proposing to widen that alley. The way it stands right now, it's about 16 feet. We're going to go up to 20 feet. We're widening additional 4 feet to make the alley wider for circulation. However, the cars that are westbound coming from Wilson Avenue, they're basically going to get in very quickly from that angle, and it's not going to be any problem. We have laid the templates, and we talked to the traffic and transportation. Mr. Tom Mitchell is here. We have a number of meetings with them, and it swings pretty easily.
Okay. That was just my concern, that it's a smooth transition to veer in and then come in. I would like to see more signage wherever you can put it. I think it's great. I mean, Hyatt is certainly a quality business, and to start seeing names like that on our skyline, I think would certainly add to the panache of Glendale and the downtown. So wherever you can fit it, I'm not opposed to more signage. Mr. Yusefian, I think, suggested more on Central Avenue and something more visible on the south elevation coming down from the freeway. I think the more the better. It's an interesting, as far as the design goes, we've really developed an interesting two-block area with the Hyatt with its nice contemporary design. Across the street is the Alexander. Next to that will be the City Center, City Center 2, and even in taken in with the office building, the current City Center 1, really is a nice contemporary neighborhood that we're developing there. So I'm very happy with the design. I like the two-tone effect. And the last comment is I need to hand it to Comar for sticking with the City of Glendale. You had, I remember your first design. It was more of a Spanish design at the Panda Insight, and you had gone quite a long way in making that happen, and due to some other considerations, we told you guys, no, 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 no. And rather than just packing up your work and your bags and going to some other city, you did look for other spots, and you found this, and you did come to us. So I'm very happy that Comar did that. You could have easily said, oh, you guys don't know what you're doing. And maybe you said that, but you didn't run away and say you don't know what you're doing. You stuck with us and found a very nice site, and are hopefully going to be building a great addition to our city. So I'm very happy with the company's perseverance, as well as your versatility as an architect. Going back to that first one, it was very Spanish and Mediterranean, and this is now really also quite striking in its dimensions and visibility. So I'm very happy with that. Mr. Weaver.
Question, have you worked on, if you're eastbound on Wilson, left turn lane to turn in, has that been talked about?
Yes.
Will there be thumbs up, left turn lane or something to get in? What?
Two-way left turn lane.
Left turn lane.
Ah, okay.
Waiting that.
And while my colleagues have been talking, you know, I love that interior so much of the gallery, and I do not want to be thrown out of there because I vote against it. So I think I've made my point, as Mr. Raymond has said, and I'll support it. Okay? But it better look like this, because I want to go in there. Okay?
Thank you.
They were going to just charge you twice as much.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Yusefian for another follow-up, and then Mr. Quintero has one. And
I actually have a question from Mr. Lewin. And this is just a couple of technical questions that you could answer code-wise. I'm looking at the alleyway facade.
Correct.
Absolutely nothing.
That's right.
Now, no windows, nothing. There's a 20-foot alley there. Nobody's going to be built right next to it. Explain to me, why is it that the code requires absolutely no windows on that side?
The planning code does not require it, but the building code requires it because of the potential adjacencies with buildings on the other side of the alley.
Okay, and because I have seen hotels next to the alleys with windows. Does it have to do with the width of the alley?
Right now,
it's a fire code regulation.
Fire code regulation.
What does it need to be, 25, 27 feet before you can do that?
Changed recently. It's
minimum of 20 feet. Okay, so, and this is not wide enough to allow for the windows up there?
No, not with them building right on the property line as they're proposing.
There is another facade that you could possibly put a sign to just kind of dress it up, because I would say that's a place that you could do something with it. It's very dark. The other thing is, since we are keeping one of the floors as public parking, which probably be the first floor as public parking, where would the signage on that be?
We've discussed that as being obviously located on the central facade, that we'd want to have some sort of signage that says public parking.
Okay.
People know that there is public parking available.
Okay, so
They
this
fall
way,
into the hotel.
because that, I like to see that when he comes back.
Yeah, we've discussed
More of the accentuation of the, and did you have any comments on this project itself? I know your comments were very brief, but...
There are very minor comments, I think a matter of questions mostly related to the Central Avenue facade that I think you touched on.
Okay, so you will be
And
working
Nagarian
with
touched
them
on
to
as
do
well.
something with that.
Yeah.
And on the helipad, this is the section down in here that is the screen, I assume. Okay. There are, is there a way to canvas that screen and then light it from down below? So it's not
I
a
think
chain link?
We could probably address that. We've certainly talked about the issue of the helipad with the experience we have with
Right,
MSC
because
Suites.
my understanding was with the hotel, the other hotel, that was an architectural feature, and it was supposed to be lit up.
Yeah, that's my understanding of that.
And so on this one, if it's just chain link, it's going to look pretty, you will see it, even though if it's in the middle. Just the angle, you will see it. So you may want to work with them somehow to make that into a feature.
Right, we've discussed that with them already,
Okay.
so we'll be addressing that for stage 2.
Thank you.
Mr. Quintero.
I'm prepared to move 6A1.
I will close the public hearing.
And I'll second it.
And
Show my good faith.
let me just make one more comment.
And a discount on the room.
And all, yeah, no free dinners at the gallery.
No.
Lunches, either.
I'm just kidding.
And I just want to also point out, we keep Mr. Alajajian as getting all of the kudos, but it is a partnership, and Mr. Marcuzzi, I'm sure, had as much to do with the design as Mr. Alajajian, so compliment the partnership. So anyway, I move 6A1.
Seconded by Mr. Weaver.
With
There's
comments?
with the comments by all agency members. Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Chairman Draymond, Chairman Najarian, sorry.
Yes.
Is there any agency member or staff comments?
Mr. Youssef.
Mr. Chair, I had one question on this. When is the EIR coming back on this? Staff know? I know, but when?
We just extend the GDA another, DNA another 90 days, and we're hoping that we work out the business terms and come back to you with those terms, and then continue working on the EIR. So it's hard for me to
Yeah,
anticipate probably
October, November
November.
timeframe.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
but not the full EIR.
Mr. Weaver.
And I'll repeat it again, I'd like staff to take a look at parking requirements. I think they may be obsolete to some degree.
Anything else?
Move to adjourn for the agency.
Second.
And the agency is adjourned. Thank you.
Get your EIR done.
Okay, due to the hour, let's press right along.